r AskReddit by Reddit universe. Redditors who work at remote places like forest officers, oil rig workers, etc. What creepy things have you noticed while at work? Make sure to like and subscribe. I used to work in the oil field for a company that sold oil tools for drilling and fracking companies to rent in Bridgeport, Texas. Our yard was next to a women's prison. We shared a fence with them. Sometimes when the ladies would be out on the yard they could see us working on our trucks or just doing random tasks and they would try to flirt with us and show us their tits and shit, and sometimes we would see a fight. Some nights I would get back to the yard really late and it was definitely against the rules for the women to be out in their yard after dark. A couple nights I got back at 11 PM and I was the only one at the yard. I parked my truck all the way in the back like always. And one night specifically as I was walking away from my truck somebody whistled at me. It wasn't faint at all, it was a very loud and clear flirtatious whistle. You know the one. Like the generic whistle that people do when they see someone they think is attractive. That hoot-you whistle. I don't know how else to describe it. But anyway, it creeped me TF out, especially when I looked back and there was nobody there, but it sounded so close. About a week later I got back to the yard late as fuck again and I was still creeped out by what had happened the week prior. Well, I parked my truck in the same place and started walking away, and I'll be damned if I didn't hear the exact whistle again. I looked back and there was no one to be seen, so I yelled out, "Who's there?" and just dead silence. I picked up my flashlight and shined it at the dark corner of the fence where it was coming from and couldn't see anything. Then I turned around and saw a dark figure standing on the opposite side of the yard in the back where there is never anything or any reason to be back there, plus it was way too late for anyone else to be at our yard. I yelled out, "Hey, what are you doing?" And they just climbed over the fence back to the side of the prison, over the fucking razor wire, and into the darkness. I told my boss the next day and he said he think he's seen somebody back there at night too, but he never looked into it. I still get so weirded out when I think about it. Working late at night on a remote mine site, changing out a switch in a substation on the edge of the pit. Just me and a quiet room full of gently humming transformers. I finish up and head for the door and I see 3 pairs of red eyes staring through the window. Nothing else visible, just blackness and 3 sets of red eyes. Turns out goat's eyes reflect red at night, and they like staring in windows. I was a creepy occurrence. I live on a ranch off of a quiet dirt road. Our distant neighbors, nearest house is about 1 mile away as the crow flies, have had issues with people stealing things out of their outbuildings and storage sheds in the area. It was also late in the year, so it was starting to get dark around 6 PM. So as a result, every time I would see headlights go down our road I would watch to make sure they weren't stopping on the property. One evening I see a vehicle going very slowly down the road and come to a stop at the end of our driveway, about 120 yards from our front porch. The vehicle is parked right in front of a 60s pickup I have parked, so I think whoever it is might be looking to steal it, or just looking over the property. Whatever the case, I decide to put on a black coat and grab my rifle to go investigate. It's dark out, so I stay out of the headlights of the vehicle so I can get close. I can tell it is a white van, but I don't see anything else distinguishing about the van. When I'm about 50 yards away the van backs up and turns into our driveway. I freeze as the headlights wash across me standing in the middle of my driveway, and I see the reflective FedEx logos on the side of the van. Needless to say, the FedEx driver probably shit his pants as he suddenly sees a dark figure standing in the middle of a field, in the dark, holding a rifle. Surprisingly, after I try to give a friendly wave and smile, he continues up the driveway to the house, and I get to explain the situation and we both have a laugh. So that's how I got to be the creepy guy in some FedEx delivery driver's story. I've worked in Canada's north for a few years now in oil and gas. It's pretty creepy when during night shift you realize a moose has just been standing at the tree line staring you down for an unknown length of time. Or finding bear tracks crossing the tracks you just made 5 minutes ago. Honestly, the silence of a snowy forest in the dead of night 100s of km away from anything is pretty spooky. When your only contact to the outside world is a radio channel nobody's listening to, you feel pretty alone. Working on ships, there was one night I was on a ship sailing through Alaskan waters, and it happened to be my first night ever seeing northern lights. I can't believe how awesome that was. It made the sky clear, made the night look like it was dusk. We were able to see clearly for miles. Few buddies and I hit the roof, or what we call Lido deck, at 1 AM just to gaze at it. An hour or so in, there was 6 of us on top, nearly the entire crew now. A big white spotlight shines at us. We were near land, but where the spotlight was above the water, and it wasn't low enough to be on a ship. This was very high up. It shined on us for about 15-20 seconds. Once the light turned off, we looked to see what it was. Saw nothing. No trace of an aircraft or anything. Couple minutes go by and the same light shined on us. This time it was on the other side of our vessel, above mountains. Still, unable to see what it was. We all saw it. We all have never seen any aircrafts hovering above these waters, especially at 2 AM. We don't know what it was. We think it might have been some sort of silenced aircraft the military was probably doing drills or something. But anyways, that was one of the weirder things to happen out on the ocean. I was a field geologist in the outback about 12 hours north of Adelaide. One day I was driving the truck and saw what looked like a flagpole sticking up in the middle of nowhere. I wasn't anywhere near a farm or anywhere else that people would be, so I decided to drive over and check it out. It was a dead dog fully impaled on a spike, like, from butt to mouth. Took some pictures and had my boss call the cops, but for the rest of the assignment I was freaked out that some maniac was out there with me. Edit. I don't know if it was a domestic dog or a dingo or something. It was pretty well decayed when I found it. Second edit. I'm not sharing the pictures. Please stop asking. I've been fishing out in the Gulf of Mexico where they have some oil rigs. This rig wasn't being used, from what we knew, so we would get pretty close to it to fish for red snapper. While we were out there, we could have sworn we heard screams of a woman over and over. It was some shit, but the explanation was the wind making the noises as it blew through the rig. Well, that's what we were told, but it totally creeped us the FCK out. Spent a summer in Wyoming going to BLM land and other remote locations collecting data on bats and herpetofauna. Heard a lot of weird noises like mountain lions screaming, deer snorting, what sounded like owls fighting. Woke up one morning to find 2 bull moose sleeping 20 yards behind my tent. All of this was part of the job until one night a truck was driving towards us when we were on a BLM square in the southwestern part of the state. The truck was going overland, no road, and was slowly driving at us. It stopped about 100 yards away, turned off the lights, and we could see a person get out. They walked a full circle around us at 100 yards away, got back in the truck and turned around. This was after dark, and this shadowy figure did a complete circle around us. You could hear them walking through the sagebrush, and I'm sure they could hear us talking. We packed up after that and drove to a hotel an hour away. I called the office and told them I was taking a gun when we went back out. Didn't like having the bear mace as our only defense. Edit. BLM stands for Bureau of Land Management. When I was 15 years old, I was doing my 4 AM newspaper delivery round on bicycle. I was driving into the garden of this one subscriber where I saw 2 guys with flashlights looking through the windows of the house. I was a bit in shock and just said, "Good morning, guys." They were just as much in shock, and an awkward silence followed. I tried to break the silence by asking if I could pass them to deliver the newspaper through the door. One of the guys said the person living in that house did something to his family and they took it as an opportunity to get away in their car that was still running. When they were gone, I rang the doorbell at the house to tell them what happened and they should keep an eye out. We were wrapping up for the day in northern Canada. I am fueling up the side boom. I'm all by myself at this point cause I was tired of listening to the laborers whine of the cold, so I told them I would take care of the rest. Think bulldozer with no blade but a giant metal boom on the side that we use to razor and lower pipe. It's February, so pitch black. I keep hearing some weird sound. I can't quite hear it cause the pump is too loud. I search around a couple times and see nothing. I get in the truck and take off, drive past the front of the side boom to see a cougar sitting on top of a dirt pile 15 feet away. The damn thing was just watching me there and probably could have ended me without me even realizing it. I've never seen a cougar in the wild before and it's hard to understand just how big they are and how powerful until you see one up close. That thing leaped off the 6 featuring pile and probably didn't touch ground for 15-20 featuring. It's terrifying to think something so big and powerful could just be sitting there deciding if they want to make you dinner. Used to be a supervisor for a janitorial company, and a couple times a week I had to go to a middle school and clean their hallway floors and gymnasium with a Zamboni type vehicle that mopped and scrubbed the floor. When I was there I had the whole school to myself. Used to get finished quickly and go to the library and read while eating my dinner. Well, one morning after being there, I get a call from school security and they want me to come in. When I get there I see a police car too. Oh, I think. They ask me a few questions like, did you notice anything out of the ordinary or strange while you were here last night? No, I hadn't. Usually have headphones in. Security then shows me camera footage of someone breaking into one of the classrooms while I was riding the Zamboni not far away. I was there for another 2 hours. Nothing was stolen. But the worst part was they didn't have footage of the person leaving. They didn't go out the way they came in, and police had to sweep the entire school. Never did find out what happened with that one. My mom used to live in a small town in the Cascade Mountains and worked as a forest ranger. The creepiest thing that happened was when the oldest male ranger kept hitting on her and trying to get her to come home with him. Not very out of the ordinary, but many years later after she left the town she found out he had been convicted of manslaughter and had killed a young female ranger right before she got hired. She would have probably been his next target. My oldest brother used to work the overnight sprinklers on a golf course. He took me out one time just for fun, and as we were driving uphill on a fairway, a figure of a lady appeared in the headlights at the top of the hill. My brother steered a little to the left of her and kept driving right on by. I stared right into her eyes as we drove by and she stared back. Her eyes glowed like a cat in the night. As soon as we were out of voice range I asked my brother what the hell was that. He calmly responded, "Yay, she lives on the golf course and likes to terrorize the workers from time to time. I usually see her out here once a week." Alright, cool. My parents live pretty far back in the country and have one neighboring house. The neighbors would let their basset hound outside for about 10 minutes to use the bathroom every morning. One morning they let him out, and he didn't come back inside. After a couple minutes they walked out to his favorite bathroom spot, and found his head. Judging from the tracks, a mountain lion had ambushed him and apparently torn his head off before carrying the body away. What I thought was the creepiest part was that the family hadn't heard a sound. I'm not sure this counts, but I'm a teacher at an urban public school and was at work late grading and getting ready for the next day. Time had kind of flown by and before I knew it, it was 7 p.m. I start packing up to leave in a building that is, in theory, locked and empty besides me, when our Alice alarm goes off, indicating an armed intruder in the building. I am 1, alone 2, young 3, freaked AF because I am absolutely not ready to fight a gunman over my lesson plans. I book it out of the school and dive into my car, hearing the alarm blaring the entire time. I peel out the parking lot, and can see in my rear view the alarm lights still flashing and debate never going back. Cause FCK that LMAO. Turns out they were doing routine maintenance and didn't send out an email to the teachers. We have a PTO pump spot that comes out of a canal for our rice fields. When I was like 12 years old my uncle found 2 bodies dumped in the little sump area where our pump sat. Both of the ladies that were dumped there had the same tattoos, so they think it was gang related, but it was 45 minutes away from where that gang operated. I still look in the hole every time I go by there, and that was 20 years ago. I work for a medical examiner and used to be on the graveyard shift alone. The first night I was on at midnight on the dot our air system shut off, which caused the vents to warp. That shit sounded like somebody running through the vents in the ceiling on all fours. Thankfully I got used to it, lol, but def creepy at first. Another night we lost power and stupid me watching a horror movie working so hard almost shit my pants when everything went dark, and knowing that a room with around 30 dead bodies in it was walking distance away. That one I stayed in my car for, not to mention the constant long dark red lit hallways. Glad I'm not on overnight now. Used to teach outdoor education, which was essentially just summer camp during the school year, and school groups would come up and spend a few days at the camp. On their last night we would always tell them a scary story around the campfire. It was the same scary story every time. We worked in partners, so there were always 2 staff members for every school group. One staff member would tell the story and the other staff member would go hide in the forest and make scary noises. So, I'm telling the story and every few minutes there's like a snap of a twig or rustling in the bushes, and of course as always the kids all get freaked out and they start getting scared. It's very fun. Well, as I'm telling a story I'm walking around the campfire looking at all the kids' faces and I noticed a familiar one. My partner Eric, sitting there smiling at me wondering why I'm staring at him. My heart has never started beating so fast in my life. Eventually I sped through the story and all the kids left and I explained to Eric that I thought it was him in the woods and his eyes got very wide and he said, "Are you telling me that that wasn't one of the staff members?" So we both ran back to the main road. I was serving as a fireman for my nation's compulsory national service. Once, we were called into the forest to retrieve a body who was found hanging on a noose, deep along one of the running trails. He had apparently committed suicide by hanging himself off a tree. Was found by a few morning joggers. What's creepy was, we found a straw doll at the foot of the tree. It was stabbed with a few red bobby pins in the head, facial area, and there was also an unknown talisman that was half burned where the doll was sitting. When we took the body down, we had to carry him a few kilometers out of the forest and halfway along the journey, a previously unnoticed wound on his face started bleeding. One of my men swore that it was bleeding from the same spot as where the bobby pin was stuck on the doll, but we could not confirm it as we left the doll where his body was found, for the police, passed the body to the paramedics and booked our way out of the area. Edit. Wow, thank you for the upvotes and the award. Glad that everyone enjoyed the story. Yes, this happened in Southeast Asia, where almost all religion exists here. In my brief stint as a rural health nurse, I was quite unnerved by how many of the families I worked with still practiced ritual animal sacrifice, even though on paper they identify as Catholic. I worked in a store once in a really small town that was always absolutely dead, a customer every hour or so, shifts all alone too, which I'm sure wasn't even legal, but hey. Anyway, it's a dark evening and I'm sat on Reddit as usual when I hear the door open. I look up and see the back of a man as he begins walking down the first aisle towards the tin foods and he appears to be talking to someone on the phone. I think nothing of it and go back to Reddit. All of a sudden I get this intense smell of soil and earth. I look up and the man's approaching the counter and he's wearing some kind of overalls and his face and long grey hair and body is just covered in dirt. That's when I notice he isn't on the phone at all and is just talking to himself in this absolutely bizarre tone. He sounded like a cartoon elf or something. He's just sort of murmuring and doing this really weird he sort of laugh. I'm just frozen solid, as he's stood at the counter in front of me thinking I'm about to be killed when a policeman storms through the door. He asks if I'm okay, to which I don't respond because I'm just in a complete state of what the fuck is happening. Tells the man to come outside, to which he starts murmuring gibberish and saying the words legal over and over again. They come grab the man and put him in the back of the police car, and that's the last I ever heard of it. I have no idea who he was, what was going on, but I have never been so afraid of another person before. You know when you just sense a bad situation. So grateful the police showed up when they did. I'm in the Navy and work on aircraft carriers. A girl sadly hung herself in one of the spaces right near where me and my shop slept. One person swore he saw her sitting in the chair as he was getting undressed one day and ran screaming out of the berthing. I waited about a week to go into the space where she hung herself, and when I did I heard the loudest screeching noise I had ever heard in my life. I quickly turned around and got the fuck out of there. The system connected to where she slept didn't work at all for the next 2 weeks or so. The systems break a lot, so it was pretty coincidental that it happened just as she did this. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Reddit Universe.